Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello MMR.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. I hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about us. Before we start the show, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for our show's prayer. Father Walters?
O God, as we create and miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Thank you, Father. We appreciate so much all of your contribution to our show. Now I want to run the sponsored video.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wanky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
And I've got one announcement before we start the show tonight. I got an email from Scott Gear about his April 2025 Great Scale Model Train Show in Timonium. The Train Collectors Association changed their date because of a conflict with Easter, and that was going to conflict with the date that Scott normally has his show. So for next year, instead of it being in April, Scott has moved the Timonium show to May 3 and 4 of 2025. So May the 3rd and 4th of 2025 will be the Great Scale Model Train Show instead of its normal time in April. It'll be the same location, but just 1 week after it normally would be available to you. So Scott wanted everybody to know about it and to make the note in your calendars. Tonight's show is a little different. Normally we have different segments. We have people show how they do certain things or build from scratch or whatever. But tonight we're going to do a modeling lifestyle segment. We've never done one of these on a Wednesday before. Normally we've done them in the past on Thursday, and they've been closed except for Zoom, except for the person who is featured and 3 of their friends. But tonight, because this is the last one that we have for 2024, we thought, well, let's try it a little differently. Let's try it on our normal Wednesday show, open it up to everybody that normally comes on Wednesday evening, and do the last one this way to see if it's a better fit for what we're trying to accomplish with the modeling lifestyle, because it'll give everybody that normally is involved with New Tracks modeling an opportunity to really talk to the person that we're featuring. So I want to thank everybody for coming to the show this evening. And this is the last of the modeling lifestyle shows that we'll be doing in 2024. We wanted to do this to where we could maximize the capability of everybody to be involved, and that's why we're doing it on Wednesday evening. So thanks so much to our viewers for joining us tonight. For the Zoom viewers, if you have any questions.
Welcome to the Modeling Lifestyle, where we celebrate how modelers have embraced their modeling and friendships as a lifestyle. We discuss how modeling can become a life passion and lead to lifelong friendships. The goal of the modeling lifestyle is to preserve the modeling and interests of leading modelers in the modeling industry.
So, thanks so much to our viewers for joining us tonight. For the Zoom viewers, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask our guest, if you'll just raise your hand. What we want to do is give the guest and his three friends an opportunity to answer the questions that I'm going to be asking of them, and then as soon as they have finished, to take all of the questions from anybody else that's on the Zoom call that have raised their hand, and anybody else in the chat function that is watching the show live on our YouTube channel. So if you're on Zoom, raise your hand so that you can be recognized for the question that you want to comment about. And if you're on the YouTube channel, if you'll go into the chat function and indicate that you want to ask a question about that specific question that I've asked the guest. Both the chat function and the Zoom show is being monitored, so you can rest assured that all your questions will be answered. Tonight you're going to meet a really great modeler, but one who has made significant contributions to our hobby and made modeling a significant part of his personal lifestyle. Please meet Kurt Thompson MMR. Kurt is not only an active modeler, but he's also a major promoter of model railroading and a person who has inspired and helped many other modelers both improve their modeling skills and knowledge of our wonderful hobby. So Kurt, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for asking me, Jim.
Tell us a little bit about your background to start us off.
Well, my model railroading and playing with trains started when I was 4, which is now 60 years ago. And it all came about because my brother he and his friends wanted slot car races, and my parents bought a road and rails race set from Marx Brothers Toy Company. As my brothers were racing their cars around the track, my parents told them to set up the loop of train track, and I got to orbit the rails with my F7 and was trying to catch them at the crossing. I wasn't very successful. But also at the same time, watching the B&O out the back door and watching the Midland subdivision, I didn't know its name then, watched B&O troop back and forth. And a friend of the family was the track supervisor for the B&O in that part of Ohio. So I got introduced to that, and my first climb up on a real diesel was probably about age 5. I couldn't even reach the bottom step, but got helped up. And so that was my first time in the cab. And then 5 years later, the same friend, Joe O'Brien, as track supervisor, was supervising the delivery of the first continuous welded rail, or they called it ribbon rail then. And I got 2 days of being in the thick of it with the delivery crews. And that was my first experience driving a locomotive too. I was in the cab for the second day with the engineer, the fireman, front end brakeman, and got to run a caboose hop from the center of town out to 5 miles out of town where they were stashing the quarter-mile long train. So that's how I got started.
But you know, your the history sounds a lot like a lot of us did. You know, we kind of stumbled into it based on just circumstances. But what really drew you to model railroading?
I, as I say, the locomotive that was in the road and rail set was an F7, and I have an affinity for F7s and sort of like E8s, which are just lengthened F7s in my book. And I've just the mass and the engineering and just watching them go from here to there, kind of carrying my dreams with them at times, is that, you know, they're moving on to other things and connecting the world or connecting my world with the rest of it. So,
What scales have you modeled?
I started out in HO and was in HO for many years. 2016, I gave up HO and moved to O scale after being kind of teased into it by one of my fellow modelers, Jack Keene, who will be along shortly. My wife talks about Jack being my enabler. He enabled me to get out of HO and into O scale, and that was 8 years ago. But I've modeled in HO predominantly. I did some scratch building for my AP program in ON 30, which was, you know, using HO trucks under O scale cars. And then I moved full-fledged into O scale and now am moving into a niche of O scale, Proto 48.
So I assume that O scale 48, Proto 48 would be the favorite scale if you had one to pick?
Right now, yes, it's going to keep me busy for the next few years as I build my current layout.
What aspects of model railroading do you enjoy the most, Kurt?
I like operations. Um, I like to go on layout tours and see a layout operate, but I like to participate in the operating sessions whenever I can. And I enjoy the various positions. At Jeff Mutter's, who you'll meet shortly, at his sessions, I'm frequently the dispatcher. And the picture you're seeing is the previous O scale layout I had, which was predominantly a switching layout. It had this small town called East Iota, somewhere located in Middle Ohio. And then the other side of the room, there was a brewery. And the room is only 14.5 by 8.5 wide. So yes, you can do O scale in a small space. And the current picture is, this is East Iota looking down the tracks, and that's Tom Casey, one of my fellow modelers here in the Chesapeake division of the Mideast region. And the equipment was lettered for Cincinnati and Lake Erie, my fictionalized version that the CNLE survived but went diesel in the 30s instead of going bankrupt.
Well, you know, you're well known in the Mideast region. I've heard about you for years. But many of us haven't ever seen any of your modeling. So let's take a look at a few photos about your building talents. Now, what is this?
Okay, the story behind this is you see two trestles. The foreground one is obviously HO, and the rear one is O scale. When I was working on my achievement program certificate for structures, it does say that you have to have one bridge out of that. And I scratch built the HO one somewhere probably about 2015. And Tom Casey, who you saw in the previous photo, had seen it, and the Chesapeake division had done a group build of that trestle as part of the, you know, trying to instill, you know, help people get into the model. And somehow I always say the gremlins took the HO one and vanished it for God knows how many years in all the stuff. And I'd emptied every box under my layout more than twice looking for it. And when it came time, I built the O scale one because I had moved to O scale, and I thought, yeah, I'll just rebuild it and get it judged, which I did. And it earned a merit award. I think it got like 91 points, well above the 88 marker that I needed.
Yeah.
But when it came time for the final push to get my structures judged, Tom had to I had to hand Tom the paperwork, and I said, that bottom line where it says H.O. Trestle, that's your signature because you know I built it. He says, yeah, but can you prove it? I said, your proof. And he did sign off because he remembered. Now, I found it about 4 months ago, which is why there's a photo of it. Gremlins finally gave it back. So those are two of the structures that I built. And now you see another structure. Look, the L-shaped station was built based on drawings in a model railroading article from the 60s about a station master's residence, combination freight house and residence. So I built that in O scale. It was originally drawn on Strathmore in the article, but I don't do Strathmore. I do lumber. I never worked with Strathmore paper before. And then you see three flat cars with loads. You see two gondolas with, gravel loads. And those are 5 of the 8 scratch built cars that I made. Those are ON30, that they're cheap little backwoods lumber company that just, build a flat car and then make it do what you need it to do. Put low sides on it for a gondola. One of them I actually put an HO scale tank on with a tank cradle and made it a tank car. But these are the models that I presented, and 4 of them earned merit awards, and that was what I needed for my AP achievement for cars.
What got you involved with ON30?
Again, it was a way to stretch myself a little bit because I'd never scratch built anything before. And Peter Moffat, who is a master model railroader years and years ago before I ever was on the scene with it, did a number of articles about SN42 and the cars that he built. And as Martin Brechbiel has said often, if you can build a subframe for a flat car, you can build any car you need. And it just was a method for me to learn to scratch build, learn to handle lumber, and kind of get back towards what I used to do when I was a model rocketeer, when I would build model rockets from wood pieces and launch them. So ON30 was just kind of a stop. It wasn't anything long-term I was planning on doing.
So now that you're in Proto 48, are you still involved at all with ON30 or NMRA gauge? Or are you going 100% standard O scale?
I'm 100% standard O scale.
Okay. Well, now let's meet a couple of your friends to help us better understand exactly who Kurt Thompson MMR is all about and who he really is. So how about the first friend being Jeff Mutter? Jeff, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you met Kurt.
Well, I've been a model railroader for over 50 years. I'm working on my third layout. It's a 28 by 34 foot HO scale double deck, triple deck layout in the basement. It's the Erie Lackawanna Scranton division in 1975, and I model the division from Scranton to East Stroudsburg on the main line, and then from Scranton to Rupert on the Bloomsburg branch. The railroad's fully operational. And scenery is about 40% done or so. This shot right here is as the foot of the stairs is the top of the grade on the left, and then the beginning of the branch, excuse me, on the left below. On the next slide, you'll see on the left is an extension of that upper deck, and also shows the main classification yard and Taylor yard. But on the right is the 3-deck arrangement I was talking about. This is only this section and around the corner, but the bottom is about the end of the Bloomsburg branch. The middle is the grade climbing up around the peninsula up to the upper deck, and the upper deck is the East Stroudsburg, the end of the line before it goes into staging. The east and west ends of the yard of the railroad are 11-track staging yards. And the end of the Bloomsburg branch has a 7-track staging yard. So if we
Jeff, what's the height of your various levels?
you know, I should know that because I get asked that. The upper deck is around 60 inches, I think.
Okay.
And the lower deck is around 42 or 45.
Gotcha.
And the middle deck varies because it's on the grade from the lower level up to the upper level.
Well, it's beautiful modeling.
So moving on to the next slide is another view of, this is the further end of the main yard down below, and the upper deck is Tobyhanna, with the Tobyhanna station and some industry up there. And then the last one of the overview shots here is around the corner. If you turn the other way when you went down the foot of the stairs, this is Moscow up above, which is in the middle of the grade, and the beginning of the coal country down below, or the anthracite coal country. And that's and then the next slide, as Kurt implied or talked about, I'm really into operations. And we have regular operating sessions. This is not Kurt. This is another friend of ours who's operating the yard there using the proto throttle. And
how many people do you require for operation?
it varies depending on the trick. I have split the schedule up into the 24-hour schedule up into 3 8-hour tricks, and that varies from 10 to 14 people, depending on what trains run and how much switching there is and that kind of thing. And every train is run with a proto throttle. It's what Fritz is using here. And all the locomotives are set up with a lot of momentum and brakes, and every train has at least one sound equipped locomotive in it. So it raises the whole, the running trains up to a whole nother level. And it makes switching jobs really require 2 people. You need someone to run the train and someone to handle the paperwork, because each person has enough to do that they can't do both jobs very easily at the same time.
Do you have trouble getting people to operate?
Depends on the time of year, but usually no. I had a little trouble. The last session was in September. I had a little trouble, but there were a bunch of conflicts with other events. November is often a problem, but right now I only need like 3 or 4 people to have a full crew for the next operating session. So it varies.
I got you. Thank you.
So we've got some, I also include a couple of my favorite projects here. The next is the passenger station at Moscow. We saw it in an overview a few slides back, but this I scratch built with styrene from some plans that I obtained from a guy that had drawn a couple stations on my division. And this was scratch built with styrene. I entered it in the Mideast region, regional convention contest. Oh, I've forgotten where, a couple of years ago, and it tied for 2nd place. So that was a fun project. The next one is just down the road a little bit from the station is this overpass. This was also scratch built, and if you look through the overpass down in the distance, I have a little shadow box that I put back there that has a photograph of the actual buildings that were on the other side there, and an N-scale car to force the perspective and all. There is a lot of anthracite. I model a lot of anthracite, even though in 75 anthracite traffic had dropped off. But one of the things that had become fairly common out there was the mining of the culm banks at these old mines and collieries. They would go in there and they would dig through there and pick out the good coal. And then this is a truck dump, of which there were many in the region, where those mining operations would load up a dump truck and dump it directly into the hoppers. And this is a scratch built version of that.
I'll be darned.
And the next one is, this was not scratch built, unfortunately, but it was a great kit. This is a Crow Models, CC Crow plaster kit. And in my era, most of the interlocking towers had been abandoned. So I modeled this, boarded up, and with the windows broken and things, and you can see somebody's tried to break into the door there on the left. So, and then finally, just kind of an overview of the general running between towns. And Kurt, there's an F unit for you.
You betcha.
But that brings me to how I met Kurt. Kurt's been heavily involved in this railroad from the very beginning. We moved down here in 25 years ago, and I met Kurt 22 or so years, Kurt, something like that.
22.
When I met him, we met him actually, and I met him on an EL email chat list, and then we hooked up at the Timonium train show that year, and then since then he's been helping on the railroad. He started out coming over once a week, and at that point there was like a little bit of bench work in the corner, and that was it. And he came every week, and I tell you, that was a big motivator to getting my railroad going, because it got me down the basement, and more than that, it got me down the basement between sessions to not only prepare for what projects that we were going to work on, but so that he wouldn't come down and look around and say, "Am I the only one building this railroad?" So I got him. He got me going, and after I met Kurt and we hooked up with a couple of other guys, Jack Keene was, I think, the second guy or third guy that started joining us. We now have a group of about 8 or 9, I think, folks that get together 2 days a week, actually working on everybody's railroad. We don't work on mine very much because it's past the point of needing a lot of helpers, but we get together and work on Jack's layout and a couple of other layouts. So I got to say, if it weren't for Kurt, my railroad would be a pile of lumber and a bunch of dust in the basement. So I got to thank you, Kurt, because without your help, that railroad wouldn't be there. So, but that's all what I owe it all to Kurt.
Oh, don't blame me.
All right, you're very much to blame. Oh, very much so, buddy.
All right.
Or to credit.
Well, you got a beautiful layout. You really do.
I think there's a lot of credit there for you, Kurt.
Well, you got a beautiful layout. So whoever builds it, I mean, it really is gorgeous.
Well, thank you. It's been like I said, it's been a group effort. For many years, there were 6 of us that got together every Wednesday and worked on the railroad. And now it's expanded, and we've expanded out onto other people's, to work on Jack's railroad and on Travis's railroad. But, I couldn't have done all that by myself. Like I said, I might have half the lower deck built if it had been up to me. So.
All right, so let's move on to Martin Brechbiel, MMR. Martin, welcome.
Evening, Jim.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you met Kurt?
Gosh, me. I'm an embarrassment to nature, of course. An official curmudgeon O-scale modeler, I think, is the easiest title or track record you can give me. I've been an O-scaler forever. And no other scales. So not going up to larger ones. I'll stay with O-scale forever, probably. I am a model builder as opposed to a layout aficionado. I have one, but I describe my layout as more of a overgrown display module than anything else. It has track and trains can run on it, but I'd rather just go look at it and say, well, that's done. Let's go build something else now. So I build models. Kurt, I ran into Kurt officially, I think the first contact as it may well be known, between aliens, was at the Timonium train show, where I went over and twisted his arm purposely and painfully to run for vice president of the region, with considerable success, since he actually did it, which only emboldened me to do worse things later, and continue to encourage him to entrench himself up to his gills in the leadership of the region. That's about it, as far as I know. I mean, I've known him ever since then. We were at the convention, MER convention, just a couple of days ago. So having lunch, or at least waiting for Kurt's lunch to eventually appear, they had to actually go out and kill the chicken and pluck it before they could serve it to him. Cooking it was optional. So I don't know. We have slides or something, or more the questions, or what?
No, we have some slides, I think.
Oh no, we have slides.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
No?
yeah. So I'm a model builder. This is actually one that's sitting about 3 feet from me off to the shoulder, that I built for this very show. In fact, for the new tracks.
Yeah.
So it's just a scratch built, and doesn't have any real origins other than my imagination and a desire to do something to entertain me as much as anything else. I have a filing cabinet full of photos of and inspirational things to keep me occupied for the next 50 or 60 years, or longer if I need the time, which I probably will. The filing cabinet contents keep expanding when I blink or turn my backs on them. This is an example of one of those buildings I built, not only for my own entertainment, but to embarrass one of my friends, John Sethian, who I was visiting today, in fact, a couple of exits down off the DC Beltway. Yeah, this is Sethian Sons Sinks and Plumbing Septic Sewage Sucking Service, or something to that effect. This is fun to build, but this is also, I would build these for people and thrust them upon them when they were so distracted or unexpecting my handing this off to them. However, in this case, this actually got auctioned off at the Strasbourg train show as a fundraiser for the fire department. So every now and then I'll build something and we'll use it for a fundraiser, just because I have no use of it after I'm done. Once it's built, it's occupying wasted space in my office or shop or on the floor somewhere. Once built, they all need new homes because, as I said, the layout's done. Now this one is actually on my layout. This is the back side of the pickle plant, Lawther's Perfect Pickles, which is an homage to my grandmother, actually, who made pickles every year. You couldn't go down the steps to the basement in her house without having to navigate an array of crocks full of pickles being created all the way through the winter. And it was one of those things she did every year. So I named it after their last name and in her remembrance. So this actually, the roof comes off of this. There is a full second story interior. There's a full first story interior. And this occupies a rather large spot on my layout.
That's unusual. That's really neat building, though, Martin. That's so unusual. I've never seen one like that.
Well, that's all board by board, too.
Yeah.
All those clapboards are all in. Okay, yeah, go ahead with that. That's okay. Yeah, that's the second. That's up on the second story, second floor, and you can see from the interior, it's all individual boards and 2x4s and individual clapboards.
That's neat.
And the only part of scribe siding were the floors. The rest is all individuals. Lots and lots of stuff in there.
Yep.
But yeah, so that was one of the things I got really more. I was more daring I actually sent off an article to O-Scale Trains to Joe Giovanario, and he was rather pleased to get it. It was in 2 different issues, and it made the cover of the magazine. And that's my scratch-built vinegar car there as well, and a milk station. So you can see where it is on my layout. There's a little bit of track that runs between there. So yeah, this emboldened me. And this is about that time when I started actually writing more frequently for the magazine too. So let's move on to the next. Yes. So this is something else I do in my, when I have nothing else better to do in my shop, is I'll take a piece of junk that's under some table that I found at a train show and turn it into this. So you take basically what is an empty canvas, a blank slate, and create something out of it and say, well, I salvaged that one. It's a restoration salvage job. And now I have a nice, interesting car. I particularly like using these Clover House dry transfers. They're on hiatus for an undefined period of time, unfortunately, but they have some really, really interesting lettering schemes and sets of dry transfers, which make really, really unique, interesting cars. So very few of my cars, all the ones I've kept at least, are normal or common or routine cars that you see on everybody else's layouts. They're all fairly unique. They stand out. And yeah, so this is my other area of modeling. I'm a traction modeler also. I have my layout's actually steam, which most people don't understand because they've never really seen me build a steam engine. Not that I'm going to. This is an all-nation kit. It's a 3D printed car. It comes in many, many, many pieces, and you got to put them all together, clean it all up, add a interior and drive and some extra detail parts. This actually does have a pretty full interior, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was one of the first 3D printed kits I ever built. So it was actually a lot of fun. But I built a lot of traction. And yeah, there's one of my traction models inspired by a Piedmont and Northern car. One of the first BB freight motors. I just thought, that's just so cool, I have to have one. And this was about the time when I was writing for the O-Scale Trains as the traction action columnist, which I did for 16 years.
Yeah.
Just slightly forever. And this is a car I just finished back in August. This is actually a McGregor kit, of which I only had the ends, the sides, and a part of the roof. And I had to marry the resin parts to wood. So the rest of everything else on this is something I've added to it. I literally only had the ends, the sides, and part of the roof. So everything else is my parts bins and time at the workbench. There's an interior for the operators, and it's fully powered with I think it was a Wagner drive. So I build traction as well as everything else. And this is another restoration. So I don't know, Jim may know more about this than I do. I don't know who made these, but these were late 40s. This one's dated underneath of it, 1952.
Yeah.
This was a disaster car that I got at the Strasbourg train show for a very, very minimal fee, more of a gift than anything, to put in my hands and with the words, "See what you can do with this," which is those who know me, and Kurt knows this, that's just daring me to do something. You're asking for trouble now. So this is actually white metal. That was white metal parts and aluminum base, and I stripped that all the way down. The drive system actually works. Even after being sitting, it was in a horrible condition. It looked like it had been dipped in crud. But It runs nicely on 2-rail track. And, okay, so I'm not Proto 48, but traction in Pennsylvania is almost 5 feet. So I'm close enough.
Well, that's some beautiful modeling.
That was a fun one to restore. So I do a lot of restoration and rebuild. So I build models, I restore them, I complete them when people leave them partially unfinished. I'm the model builder. I'm not the layout ops guys. Kurt can tell you my exposure to ops is absolutely at the minimum required amount.
Yeah, well, being a modeler is not bad. So now let's turn to another friend, Jack Keene. Jack, welcome.
The work group on the Scranton division, on a fluke, I went over to Jeff's for an open house, and the layout was well beyond lumber on the basement floor at the time I got there, and I was happy to join in. I was working in O scale, and most of the group, all the rest of the group at that time, I think, was working in HO. But with a little good-natured ribbing and so on, we get along quite well, and most of the skills were transferable. So I started out like a lot of folks of my generation with a Christmas present, and mine happened to be American Flyer, not Lionel, and that carried me at least through elementary school, and then I built an HO layout based on an MR track plan from the early 60s. And then after college, I continued modeling in HO, although I did not have a layout at that time. We ended up moving to Northern Virginia, and I fell in with a group of narrow gaugers, actually, based on the closest hobby shop in Alexandria, Virginia. There are quite a few excellent modelers there. And so I started modeling in ON2 and continued my ON2 modeling for about 30 years, both as a home layout and also building modules that went to train shows. And we went to several national conventions, NMRA, O-Scale National, National Narrow Gauge Convention, so on. So this shot is actually of my home layout, a little vignette in Kingfield, Maine. You can see one of the Sandy River passenger locomotives and just the nose of one of the Sandy River's home-built Model T rail cars on the left, or my left anyway. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the social aspects of going to conventions. Although I must admit, when you take modules to conventions, it is a bit confining. You don't get to wander the train show as much as some of the other attendees, as you're pretty much putting on the show for the benefit of the other modelers. But ultimately, I decided I needed a new challenge, and I've always admired the Delaware and Hudson Railroad, so started modeling the Delaware and Hudson Susquehanna division between Albany and a point just northeast of Binghamton, New York, called Nineveh Junction. And we'll see a little more of that in a moment. And that's a 3-level layout. This is an example of the track work in Oneonta Yard. I have to admit that I'm not the guy who builds the beautiful switches. We have a gentleman in our group, Travis Stavek, who just loves to build turnouts. And so I've said, boy, do I have a place for you. And he's been building turnouts on my layout ever since. So I've built a few, but he's built the majority, including, you see on the right, a double slip switch, which I think he didn't enjoy quite as much as some of the others, but it operates beautifully. And this is SW Cabin at Nineveh Junction. The tracks on the right go north to Oneonta and ultimately Albany, and then north from Albany to Rouse's Point, New York, which is on the Canadian border and the way to interchange with both the CN and the CP. Nineveh Junction is the split of two major main lines for the D&H. The double track line right in front of SW Cabin is the route that takes you to Binghamton, New York, and major interchange with particularly the Erie-Lackawanna, or Erie and Lackawanna prior to the merger. And the line in the foreground is the Pennsylvania division, which goes to Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, Pennsylvania, and interchange with the Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley, and Jersey Central. So it's a real hot spot on the railroad. The building, I went out and might have been trespassing on railroad property in order to get good photographs of all four sides of the building. And then a friend was nice enough to square those up and enlarge them to 1/4-inch scale. And it became a joint modeling project. A friend, Chris McChesney, volunteered to build the structure for me. And one of the conditions was he wasn't doing the slate roof. And so I ended up doing the interior and the slate roof, and he did the basic structure. But it is the control point for this key junction, and it was also the location of the D&H's first CTC machine. The Pennsylvania division was the first part of the D&H system to receive CTC, and the machine was located in this structure. It still exists as a maintenance base for signal crews on the Norfolk Southern. This is just a typical local on the line, crossing a little culvert and past a cornfield. This is dairy country, so cornfields are quite prevalent, along with herds of cows. And just a quick vignette of one of the scenic areas of the layout. Like Jeff's layout, my layout is 2 and 3 levels, primarily 3 level. My levels are a little bit higher than Jeff's. You really need a stool to get up and see the upper reaches of the 3rd level. And I've been building the layout from the top down with a theory that, I like to do all phases of model railroading, including scenic areas. And this way I'm not putting wood chips and other debris down into finished scenic areas. So we started at the top and we're working our way down. We're approximately halfway onto the middle loop right now with our track laying. This is another view of Oneonta Yard. The area back where the passenger cars are behind the 2 Alco PAs is just about where the slip switch was in the earlier track work photo, looking from the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Those switches were located right next to the Oneonta car shops, which I have a mock-up in place now. It will remain a low relief building along the wall. That'll give you some idea of the size of the shop that's located there. And this is another view along the line, truss bridge that carries the railroad over the Susquehanna River south of Oneonta, headed for Nineveh Junction. Some of the newer motive power on the railroad, they received a group of 16 U-23Bs from GE. They were one of the first of the 2nd generation locomotives on the railroad, and introduced or were part of the introduction of General Electric motive power to the railroad. They'd previously been a bastion of Alco power. So my mixture is both Alcos and GEs on the railroad. No EMDs to date unless they're on a run through of some sort. And these are some pictures I took of Kurt's Cincinnati and Lake Erie layout. This is East Iota, as Kurt mentioned. He's there in the foreground. You can date the photo pretty accurately by the presence of face masks. This was taken in 2020, and we didn't let a little COVID keep us down. So here we are sort of working out operating schemes for the layout. You can see a little bit of the brewery complex behind Don Marvel in the gray shirt on the left, and Jeff Mutter is the guy who appears to be re-railing equipment, although that really can't be possible.
No. I was
Never.
I was uncoupling it.
Flawless track work every time.
Yeah. So not everything had been repainted in C&LE at this point. So here's Kurt taking a look at a Great Northern Alco road switcher and a Santa Fe caboose that are bringing a hop back from the interchange track. Another view of East Iota. And this is one end of the brewery complex. You can see there was some cars that were unloaded inside the building, and then the grain and other facets of the brewery operation were located to the right behind Kurt. Yeah, that's about where we're at the present time. You know,
Jack, you've got a beautiful layout. Jack, let me ask you a question. You still modeling ON2?
I'm still involved with a number of modelers who model 2-foot, but I don't have any ON2 models myself. So I'm involved socially, but not as a modeler.
I got you. Well, it's beautiful work that you're doing. It really is. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and helping us better understand your friendship with Kurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kurt, let me ask you something. 3D printing, I keep hearing so much about it. What do you think that this is going to do to our hobby, say in the next 5 years? Where is 3D printing going to take our hobby?
I think it's already taken our hobby where it's going. 3D printing allows you to, a modeler to, in the case of Jeff's Moscow station, he did the plans for the corbels on the supporting the eaves, and he had those 3D printed because they weren't available. 3D printing allows us to do on short term, on small projects, what we couldn't do because of cost to get something modeled. Right now in Etherland, the Ethernet, I've got plans for a GE Alco box cab superstructure, and I've got plans for the short hood, cab, and long hood of Bush Terminals 7 GE Alco Ingersoll Rand switch engines. Those Ingersoll Rand engines are never going to be produced in brass, and they're definitely not going to be mass produced. One railroad, 7 of them, no big market. 3D printing allows us to do those things and do things that are individually important to us. And so 3D printing is one definite avenue. It's as big a leap as going from wood to styrene, and now from styrene to cyber building and then printing. So it's here. It's going to be here for a long, long time. And I use Tinkercad, which is an absolutely free bargain basement entry level CAD program to do my stuff. And I've taught I've written articles when O-Scale Trains was a bi-monthly magazine. I did a 3-part article on using Tinkercad. I've done the clinic based on the same articles. So 3D printing's here, and if you're not willing to learn, I would recommend you take the dive.
Gotcha. Well, listen, you've shared your modeling techniques and tips and so forth with modelers in various clinics around. Can you share some of that information with us?
Okay, well, as I said, I've done clinics on using Tinkercad, and if this first slide is from one that I just gave at the most recent MER convention, because the one thing I found out that about the achievement program is there's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of misinterpreting the instructions. What are the requirements? And I'm guilty of that. When it came to structures, I was of the concern that I had to build 12 scratch built models. All of them had to be contest judged and all had to be merit award winners. And that's not what the requirements say, but I got myself wrapped around the flagpole because I read too much into it, including that the bridge had to be a huge trestle. My puddle jumpers, my creek jumpers, both qualified to meet the bridge category. But some of the other clinics, if we'll go to the next slide. Okay. Waiting for the slide. Oh, okay. This is more of the pictures you saw earlier about the trestle and some of the kits I built. The upper two are my current layout that I'm doing. This is the P48 model of C&O's Brook Avenue facility in Norfolk. And yes, I did say C&O in Norfolk. It was barge served and railroad isolated, and it was a warehousing and freight house operation with a 60,000 gallon molasses tank, which is in the upper right picture is that black cylinder that you see. That's the mock-up of the tank. So some of the other clinics, Martin was the reason I give one about demystifying the achievement program dispatcher paperwork, because Martin had all the requirements for it, but the paperwork was daunting, and the requirements can get frustrating. So I gave this clinic this last weekend at the convention as well. And even though I've given it 4 or 5 times, there's still people who come into the clinic and go, I don't understand. And so I do my best to take the fog away for this and any of the other clinics I give.
Well, I know that you're a real believer that there's a lot of people out there that they overread what they think is required for the various achievement programs. And I couldn't agree more. I saw it when I was achievement program chairman. You hear it in people's voices. They're scared to death of it. Paperwork terrifies them. They just kind of glance over some of the requirements and they're convinced that they could never qualify for it. And I don't know how you solve that problem other than like you're doing is giving clinics and trying to show people that it's not as bad as they may think.
Yeah. Well, if you see the slide that's up, you see the subtitle to the Earning Your Motive Power certificate says, "Don't overthink this." And in my naval career, I was involved in naval nuclear power, and Admiral Rickover's standards were 100% or nothing. If you weren't doing it perfectly, don't, get out of my engine room.
Right.
And that unfortunately filtered through to me when I came into the NMRA. I thought it all had to be, if it wasn't going to earn 120 points out of 125, I shouldn't bother. I've learned that 88 is a magical number and it's perfectly fine because that's the pass fail rate for earning a merit certificate out of 125 points. So yeah, I've had a lot of people that I've talked down off of the ledge that they've gotten themselves up on. And one of the clinics, getting back to that, 2019, Brian Campshire, also known as Elf, and I did a seminar clinic on how little it takes to really to do the electrical certificate for the layout.
Yeah.
We built one using Atlas Track components, and in an hour and 37 minutes, because we had the audience time us, we built a layout on 4x8 sheet of homosode on 2 tables that qualified and met the requirements for the electrical certificate for the layout portion, and it was in DC. The MER YouTube channel has a copy of that clinic seminar, was videotaped. So if you want to have a few laughs or see what, DC Neanderthal layout will get you, meeting the achievement program requirements, there it is. And it's both the it's for the electrical part. And here we're looking at some Arduino clinics that I've given. Recently, Jeff and several others have become recipients of little push button keypads sitting on top of Arduinos that will calculate a random weight for a loaded hopper. And so there's that clinic. And I've given a couple other basic Arduino clinics, taking it from plugging it in and watching it blink to doing the proto board work for a dual grade crossing with dual flashing crossing bucks.
Yeah.
So I always do clinics from the point of view as if I can do it, anybody pretty much can if they're willing to, jump in.
Yep. Well, as I said, you're so well known for the support that you give the hobby, for the achievement program that you're heavily involved in. So let's take another look at some more of your modeling and see what you build.
Okay.
Well,
this is on the prior O scale layout. The switches were all built with fast track jigs for O scale. Part of the layout was hand laid track, part of it was Atlas Flex track. The switches were all done with fast track jigs. And the answer to the question of a switch built with a fast track jig, as long as you are building the frog, is considered scratch built for the AP Civil Award. So I'll get that out of the way. This layout didn't get much farther than mock-ups, but it was operational, so I had a lot of fun with that. The cars are mostly ready to run, but the track work was mine, and the structures, the little red freight station was one of my structures for my AP certificate.
Right.
Next. This is another view of the same area, showing a side of the car. This isn't necessarily handiwork, but it's important paperwork for the railroad. Identifies. I didn't have the nice plaques that Jeff has on his layout, but mine was still in the clipboard stage. So for each side, here's the brewery side. There's the schematic and, a little brief of the locomotive and, what the job is, the job does. I think those are so handy with people.
Yeah.
And this is this was me staining the ties after I glued them all down for the hand-built track on my Proto 48 layout. And I threw away one brush and one waste, candy container that I got from work because I used it for the palette for the Ritz black dye and alcohol. And you can see no two ties are the same color of stain. which is really, in my mind, pretty prototypical. So I did the whole staining in about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And the room there are 6 tracks that are 14.5 feet long that I had to crawl up on the layout, which is going to be coming up in a minute. But that's more of it. And there's me. My wife took this for me as I was, you can see me in my Crocs, and I'm up on the layout staining the ties around the back side of the molasses tank. So, and these are some more of the models. Some of the freight cars. Did a pipe load for 2 different cars. The one on the left obviously has lost its load. It's been in the box for a couple of years, so the pipe load kind of took a hiatus, and so did the stakes and the stake pockets. But there's the Osborne Freight House, which you saw in East Iota, and the 2 HO and O scale trussels. Now, I will tell you that as part up there, that's the inside of the passenger car, which is a Pete Moffat knockoff. His railroad that he modeled, which was an actual railroad, had 4 miles of track between 2 lakes in Ontario, Canada. And they literally ran from steamship to steamship, and they had open door box cars that treated as passenger cars. But as you can see, the inside, it's framed on the inside. This bench is back there in the background, and the floor. I didn't think I took a picture of the whole model, but the point I want to make is that all of these are scratch built, and though they would not win a contest, they were merit award winners, which meant that they scored 70% of the requisite numbers to earn them. So it's being a master model railroader isn't about perfection unless you're entering, convention contests. It's all about improving my skills, which all of this did and has. But there are more of the gondolas. Those are merit award winners as well. Oh, there's the ugly passenger car. But that's pretty much what Pete Moffat showed in his original article. Little cutout windows. And I mean, this thing screams backwoods more than anything else. But there it is.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. How much research do you do on the prototype before you start building a model?
Well, I do enough to get something that looks reasonable. As you see the picture in my background, that is a picture of Brook Avenue in Norfolk, taken in the mid-50s. And I've been doing a lot of research about the warehouse, which is over my left shoulder, or my right shoulder. I'm backwards. It's over this shoulder. And I've been working on I've got a bunch of photos from various sources. And the work is important because I found out that though the warehouse is made of multiple bays, the 6th and 7th bay from the east end actually were 8 feet wider than every other bay in the place. So when I get ready to model it, I've got to make sure I account for that width and that change in width. But I wanted something that will look and convey the message of what it is when I model it. So in this case, I'm doing a lot of background research, and the CNO Historical Society has provided me a lot of archive information. And here we are with some of the places that I get information from, and sometimes reading information. These are some of the employee timetables, and there's a CNO. There's a GE locomotive operating book. This is the Pittsburgh division of the B&O. And the nice thing on the back, it has those maps. And in the center of this collage are 2 of my favorite and most dear purchases, which a friend of mine managed to find for me. when we were at a train show. The Cincinnati and Lake Erie timetable is an original, and it was printed in 1930. And it's still, I take it out gingerly and look at it. And then the DT&I timetable is also in its sleeve, and it is from, I think, the set 1972, I believe. But the others, what I use for information on routing and stuff is the employee timetables will tell you all sorts of companies that are served by sidings and stuff. And almost every one of them will have a schematic of the railroad or the division that the timetable's for, which then gives me an idea of positioning, you know.
Yeah.
I grew up in Washington Courthouse. The Ohio and Newark division went through Courthouse one way. The Midland subdivision was another subdivision, and it went the other way, and they all both crossed the DT&I. So for a little town of 8,000 people, Washington Courthouse was a pretty busy place for the railroads when I was younger.
Yeah.
So all of this, most of the timetables are from someplace that I lived, and it's a way for me to know more about how the railroad used to be, because it may not be there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, lots of Norfolk Southern. And of course, my book collection doesn't rival some, but these are the book on the Cincinnati and Lake Erie by Jack Keene. A friend of mine from the Riffraff, which I'll talk about, that was my first modeling group I belonged to, had 2 copies of it, and he sold me this copy. So I got that from Carl. I was also lived in East Tennessee, so I lived on the Southern Main Line. So have to have a Southern book or 3, and then the DTI book in color also. So, but these are just a small portion of the number of railroad books I've got. So I don't collect them, but I consume them, you know, pretty heavily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who are the people who most influenced you?
Well, as I mentioned before, Joe O'Brien, who was the track supervisor of the B&O when I was, you know, knee high to a coupler. And then when I got back into the hobby in the late 80s, I met Dean Ebner and Steve Sherrill. I met Dean first when I worked at a defense contractor. And Dean was the best man at my wedding. Picture of him. That's Dean and I on the left. Yes, the mustache is the same. The hair's a little shorter. And the group photo on the right is the Riffraff modelers who came to my wedding, to my wife, Victoria, Tori. Carl is right over Tori's head. He's the one who had the Cincinnati and Lake Erie book. He also was a traction modeler in HO, and his Lucas County traction was in Model Railroader in the late 70s. Chris, in the way back there with the smile, it was our 17-year-old or 16-year-old juniorist member of the Riffraff. But then there was Jeannie Sig to the left of Tori, and Phil, her husband, is to my right. And somebody on the call here, Steve Sherrill, is over my left shoulder. And Steve does not look that way now. And then there's Carrie and Ed Martin, who was the leader of the Riffraff, and he is in the blue jacket. And you can see from that, I hope that you know that socially, model railroading is social for me. And without people, I don't make a great lone wolf modeler. If I'm not active in a group, I'm going to be stagnant. But then from that group, I went and my wife and I moved to the Pittsburgh area, and I met a bunch of people in the mid-central region in the Pittsburgh division and was active with them for 4 years before we moved back. at that point, I kind of went into family hibernation because I had kids to raise.
Yeah.
But then I got back into it in 2000, well, in 2002, but got back into it and met Jeff and helped him with the Scranton division for X number of years. And then I took on the task with 11 others to reform the Chesapeake division of the Mideast region in the Baltimore, Annapolis area.
Uh,
And once again, a lot of socialization with that.
yeah.
And that got me involved with some of the region people, sort of, Martin being one of them, Clint Hyde, the president of the MER at the time, and Roger Kaysen, who was his president after him. And they were all saying, if you don't have an exit strategy, you're in trouble, which explains why I was the superintendent for 5 years
Yeah.
before I forced a bylaw change to get me out of it. But in all that time, I was working with Jeff on his layout, meeting Don Marvel, Jack Keene, the other 11 people who are listed on the sidebar on Jeff's website as the faithful contingency crew. So, and all of these people have touched my life. And when I worked at the Mideast region on the regional level, I met a wider group of people. And I have friends all across the region. And I have acquaintances and close and near friends at the national level who keep trying to put a hook in me to serve at the national level. My wife has an argument on that point. I have to listen to her. So
I'm going to ask you this question, Kurt. I ask everybody that that I talk with because I've had so much trouble trying to answer it for myself. When you build a model, how do you decide when you have finished that model?
well, that's a tough question to answer because I haven't finished too many models other than structures to be judged and stuff. But for me, model railroading to me is a hobby of movement, and structures of them, models of the structures and stuff are placekeepers until I build a decent model of it. But for me, I like operations. I equate it to being linear chess, both as a switch engine job and as a dispatcher working over a larger thing. So it's a tough question to answer, but I know what I'm looking for when I'm building the BFW warehouse at Brook Avenue, and when I'm building the white freight house, which is in the back corner over my right shoulder in the picture. Is it enough to look good, not look like trash, and does it convey the meaning of the structure? And that's where I go with where I need to be.
I understand. Do you consider your models works of art?
No. I don't. As I said, I consider them they're place settings. And with models, I do a lot. I mean, I'm using mostly ready to run stuff in O scale. So the models allow me to play trains, and anything that supports any of the models, whether structures or cars or locomotives that allow me to do that, that's where I want to be.
Gotcha. What advice or tips would you give a new model railroader that's just entering our hobby?
Get involved with your local division of the National Model Railroad Association. Get involved with a group of people who are maybe not in the NMRA. That's fine. Me being involved with Jeff and the rest of the people in and around Severna Park and Annapolis and Arnold really helps because it keeps me involved. And probably the first and foremost is ask questions and don't worry about appearing stupid to anybody because we all were stupid once, and sometimes more often than once.
That's good advice, I tell you. Well, Kurt, this may be a funny question, but I got to ask. every MMR that I know has a story to tell about their journey to get the MMR. Some of them are funny, some of them are sad, some of them are just plain ridiculous. What's your story?
Well, I started out thinking that I was going to become one of the youngest model railroaders to earn their MMR. And then Joel Priest set a very low bar for that number. I think he got his when he was 13 or 14. So I'm not ever was going to be the youngest, but I kept saying, oh, well, I'll get it before I'm 40. I'll get it before I'm 50. I got it in 2018 and I was 58. But for me, yeah, the achievement program for me started when we moved to Pittsburgh, and I was talking with Dennis Vaccaro and Lauren McAuliffe, and they were saying, "Have you like to operate? Have you looked at the dispatcher certificate?" And I'm like, I had that dispatcher certificate. What are you talking about? You know, I have no desires to be a master model railroader. Then they showed me, and they helped me see what I could do, and that I had done most all the work for the dispatcher certificate. And from that, I moved on to the what I call the other social certificates. I started writing articles and data sheets and stuff and turning them in and getting them published. I got published in the NMRA magazine. I got a bunch of points from the published in the division newsletter, things like that. So my first 3 certificates were what I called social: dispatching, where I got to tell people where to go with their trains, and an author and volunteer. And then I, as I said, went into family hibernation and came back out of hibernation when I started building my HO layout version of the Cincinnati and Lake Erie in 2015. Actually, earlier than that, probably 2014. And that earned me what I call the evil twin sisters. I got the civil and the electrical certificates together, or nearly together. And then I did structures and cars and got those just the month before I took over from being the Mideast region vice president to taking on my 4-year term as region president. So the big push was to get done, because I knew once I took over the presidency, I was going to be not doing a lot of modeling for 4 years, or however many years I was going to be president. So there was a big rush, and I had a lot of people. I had a structured judging party at my house. I served them fresh cookies and iced tea, and Martin was leading the judging crew, because even though at that time I was the division AP guy, I can't judge my own stuff, kind of violates the spirit. And then after being region vice president and president for a year, I filed for my 8th certificate of association official. Of course, when I got that, they had just the same year, just after I applied and earned it for my work being voted in the region, National then rewrote the rules and said, oh yeah, if you were voted in as superintendent, that counts as being, the same time constraints as being vice president or director at the regional level. So yeah, I've earned the AP Association official twice. But as our newsletter editor said in the division, I also have the oak leaf clusters to go on my author certificate, because I was writing articles in the newsletter a lot too.
Absolutely.
It only leaves me 3, but if I do finish the Brook Avenue facility correctly, I will end up finishing AP Motive Power, prototype model, and scenery, which are kind of conjunctive. So maybe I'll get 11 before when it's all said and done, but I've got 8 now, and I'm happy with what I've done.
Well, it's quite an accomplishment, and it's quite a story that you can tell. Well, now to your 3 friends. We're just about finished here. Is there anything else you'd want to tell us about or say to Kurt? Any of the three of you? Jeff?
Well,
Sorry, had to unmute. Well, what I have to say is basically, Kurt has been responsible for a lot of my involvement in the hobby since we moved down here. And after we got going on working on my railroad, then he pushed to get the Chesapeake division rolling again, and that just got me involved again in the NMRA. I hadn't been very involved up to that point, and that really brought the social aspect of the hobby really to the forefront. And that's what I enjoy the most about it too, is the social aspect, the operations, and getting to know people. So,
Jack, how about you?
well, I think Kurt's been, a big part in the development of all of our layouts. I'll spare you the gory details of our blood, sweat, and tears incident, but
It only took 5 surgical staples, Jack. Only 5.
no, we've had our ups and downs, but it's been a great experience both in building the layouts and in operating them. And Kurt has been the great cheerleader to get the rest of us more active in the division. And I think almost all of us in the work group ended up being the committee for our regional convention a few years back in Hunt Valley, Maryland, which kept us all very busy for about 3 years as we prepared for that event and fought off the ravages of COVID. So, it's been a great, well-rounded background, I think, in all aspects of model railroading.
Martin, how about you?
Well, Kurt did manage to push me over the hump on dispatcher, and my wife pushed me over the hump on scenery with an ultimatum to get all that junk off the floor. So he's been a good leader and cheerleader, both for the APN region and division. And refloating that division was a major achievement. I don't think any other new division has come to life for many decades, while some have blown away into the dust in that same time frame. So, he's got a pretty good sized hook to hang a hat on, which I think is important to be able to look back on and say, there's my hat, look at it. So, yeah, that's about it. And
how about from our viewers? Does anybody have any questions for Kurt? Comments? Okay. Kurt, it's up to you. We're about through, so you get the final word.
Well, actually, see, somebody just stuck their hand up.
Oh, okay.
Steve Sherrill. Kurt, I've got one question. I hear Proto 48, but I don't know what it is. Please tell me what it is, because I might be a Proto ON 30 and don't even know it.
Well, Proto 48 is O scale current. Well, let me jump back. Most O scale is actually 5-foot gauge track. When you buy an Atlas freight car or Weaver or whatever, it's 5-foot gauge.
Mm-hmm.
Proto 48 is hand laying the track to correct 56.5 or 4 feet 8.5 inch gauge, and then running correct prototype scale wheels and tread gauge in the cars. Whether you collapse and buy, trucks and side frames that are actually narrowed to that gauge, or whether you just have narrowed wheels. It's also to a finer standard because the wheels are all correct tread. They're narrower tread. So it's a concept, and it's a way to make if you look at a Proto 48 end on and you look at a regular O scale and you look at the wheels and you go, oh my God, it's amazing what 4 inches of difference makes, even in O scale. It's
Yeah.
just a standard to model in.
Now, is there any commercial track available for that?
There's code 125 flex track available from right of way, which also does switch points and various pieces for switch work, frogs, points, guardrails, things like that. So I'm not hand laying, I'm buying switch points and frogs and guardrails from Jay Criswell of right of way. So my switches are going to be slowly hand built on site.
Now, when you do the 48-inch, 4.8, excuse me, 4 feet 8.5 between the rails, do you now do prototype ties for the correct length?
I do. The ties are 8.5 feet, scale 8.5 instead of 9, which is standard for what they call OW5 is usually a 9-foot tie, but I'm using 8.5-foot ties.
So you're more or less your prototype everything.
Yes. Now on my layout, only the first 3 rails, the first 3 tracks back from the front edge will have tie plates, because that's another part of the insanity of Proto 48 is putting tie plates on every rail. But after 2 feet in, you're not going to see them. So I'm not going to bother 2 feet back.
Well, I can see my influence didn't last very long with you.
No, yours and Dean's and the Aniston, Silverton, and Cheryl stood the test of time on me.
Animus, Silverton, and Southern. Yes.
I thought it was Cheryl, but okay.
No.
AS and S, that's all I remember.
Yeah, the root of the S, that's right. Yeah, but anyway, we had some fun, didn't we?
We did.
It's always nice to have good friends to be around. It makes it so much easier to model, and just enjoy yourself when you get with a group of model railroaders.
That's true.
So, congratulations on everything you have accomplished.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks for being part of it.
Well, I'm glad that I was. That's part of the fun of it, is being able to share what you've learned and just see where people go. And you're one of the persons who went somewhere that I can see and view that, hey, maybe you had a little ounce of influence over. So thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Kurt?
Yes, I do. Is there a possibility to put the link down for that electrical clinic you were talking about earlier?
I tried to get it, but I couldn't get it to come out cleanly. If you go to YouTube and type in Mideast Region channel, it'll take you to it. It'll say Elf and Hobgoblin earn their electrical certificate. I was Hobgoblin for a few years.
Understood. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Hi, Kurt. I want to thank you for being our AP manager. You've approved a number of my certificate entries. I have a question about Proto 48 after listening to you talking about your layout, and I've done enough operations to know that that operations can take hold on even a plywood empire. And when you're talking about the precision of Proto 48, the narrow treads and the exact spacing of the rails and everything, and then you can use placeholders for structures and stuff, there's almost a disconnect there between what has to be really close to prototypical and what can be really way off. And is the line drawn between the track and the rail equipment versus structures?
Well, I don't want to say, yes, you're seeing a perception, and I understand where it's come from. The Southgate terminal warehouse is going to be compressed, and it will be compressed to a large scale. It's going to go from 8 feet it would be an 8 feet plus an O scale down to 6 feet. It's not going to be the first thing I get built, but if I want to operate, I'm going to have a decent mock-up of it. The molasses tank is 16 inches in diameter for 60,000 gallons of molasses. These are projects I'm going to work on, and I will make them decent because I eventually want to earn my prototype scene AP certificate. So they have to be good. But I want to get the rails down, and I want to have that operational. And then I'll tackle each one of those structures because each one of them is signature to that.
So
scene.
eventually the goal is to have the structures as prototypical as the equipment, the wheels, the couplers, and everything else.
Right. Yes.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. And I hope you get it all done in time for me to see it.
Well, you're in Maryland, so we're close.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Hi, Kurt.
Yeah. Steve caused me to think. He was asking about wheels and track and so forth. How do you manage locomotives? Do you regauge commercially available locomotives and replace the wheels? That would seem to be quite a challenge on steam locomotives.
Well, I modeled the diesel era, and Brook Avenue it's really bad for me. Brook Avenue had one locomotive, diesel. It was a 44-tonner. I have a copy, and I already have had it commercially regauged. So the locomotive is ready. Well, actually, it's not. I've got to put a sound decoder in it and a sound cube in it. But there are multiple sources of getting Proto 48 wheels and trucks already assembled and trade them out. It can be done. It's not an overnight thing, and this is kind of my retirement project. So I expect to be working on this over the next 3 years or so, at least. But I want to get the track done so that I can operate, and then I can finish up the structure work.
Okay, thanks.
Kurt, I've got a question.
Uh-oh.
What's so special about P48? I mean, O scale been around for a long time. Many of us think it's the greatest scale in the world. Why on earth would anybody take the time and the trouble and the extra expense to convert from O scale to rail to P48?
You might have to talk to my psychiatrist about that one. For me, it's an extension of everything I've done. I mean, the HO layout was pretty much almost all ready to run track or flex track. I hand laid all the sidings and did the jig, used the fast track jigs on my O scale layout, the previous O scale layout.
Right.
And to me, it just seemed like because Brook Avenue is isolated, I've got a well-contained premise and a well-contained room to put it in, that I think P48 is doable. I mean, I was going to hand lay the track anyway, so now I'm just hand laying it with a little more precision. But Jack thinks I'm crazy, but that's okay.
I've heard that P48, it required such precision in order for it to be operational.
I've heard that too, and I don't believe it because I've heard from people who are actually doing P48 that you just do it. If you hand laid O-scale track, OW5, which I did before, you put the track gauge down, you drive the spikes home, and you move on. All I'm doing is putting all I'm doing is bringing the gauge in 3.5 scale inches, and I've got track gauges for it. And the tolerances are no closer than HO tolerance. So, I mean, if you're scratch building track work in a HO, Proto 48 is no closer in tolerance. It's not that finicky. But I have one hopper car already with Proto 48 wheels, so I can test every section of track I build.
There you go. Anybody else have any questions for Kurt?
Wow.
Well, Kurt, I'm going to give you the last word here.
Give up your fear of doing it wrong, because as I found out, errors and mistakes are instructional to me. And if I think I know it, I probably need to check with 1 or 2 other modelers. It's like, is this, if this seems this way, I always check my sources. But enjoy the hobby and enjoy the socialization.
Kurt, it's been a real honor to be with you and your 3 friends tonight. Really want to thank you for everything you have done and are doing for our great hobby of model railroading. Thanks also to all of our Zoom and YouTube viewers. I hope that you'll join and subscribe to our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. Ring the bell and click all so that you won't miss any of our future shows. Hope you'll subscribe to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, so that you'll get our newsletter once a month. And you'll also once a week get the login links to all of our Zoom shows so that you can join us live and participate in our Zoom show once a week on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And lastly, I hope you'll consider our scholarship. I hope you'll notify all of the kids you can think of that might qualify for our scholarship and ask them if they want to consider applying for it. Last year, we gave 3 $2,000 scholarships to model railroaders to continue in a STEM program. And this year, we're going to hopefully match that and maybe even exceed it. We have a list. I think we have a slide. These are the individual donors that have donated to our scholarship program so far this year. We'll be awarding the scholarship in June of next year. And so you have plenty of time to join these people. We have one platinum donor, which is Amherst Hobby Show, which is a $1,000 donation. And we have 6 companies who have contributed as brass donors at the $250 level. All of these companies are listed on our website, and I encourage you to see who they are. We also have a new program that we've just started to partner with all of the manufacturers of model railroading equipment to include information about our scholarship in each one of the kits they sell. We think it's important to try to get as much information about the scholarship program as we can out to the potential applicants as well as the potential donors. We're the only organization that offers a scholarship program that's 100% donated by the model railroading community for model railroaders. And what we're trying to do is help the future leaders of our hobby continue their education in a STEAM program. So I do hope that you'll take a look at our scholarship program on our website and consider participating in helping us get applicants notified, helping us disseminate the information at train shows and book club events, as well as possible donation to the charity itself. We're a 501c3 organization, so everything that's donated financially is tax deductible. Are there any final words from anybody before we say goodnight? If not, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. I hope that you've enjoyed the show. I hope you've enjoyed meeting Kurt and his friends. And thank you so much for joining us. Until next Wednesday, happy modeling to everyone.